I'm sitting here in the sunshine, the summer sunshine, looking out across the garden, and it's the day after Great Britain and Northern Ireland decided to leave the European Union. So where do we go now is what everybody's shouting. And we do have a blank sheet of paper. Perhaps. It seems that way, and people are wandering around not quite sure of what's going to happen. And we're looking at our politicians and being even less sure about what's going to happen. Strategic planning is something that is missing from our world. And the biggest of those probably is our use of the land. Now, we have a common agricultural policy in the EU which is dictated to us over the years, and central diktats have told us we must do this, we must do that. I'm not sure whether we need that sort of policy. Neither, though, do I believe that we should have a British agricultural policy without considering the wider implications of the environment. There are some 65 million people in this country, and as I understand it, some 65 million hectares, or I think, of land. So we're all entitled to one of those. we might get a piece in the middle of London, or we might be on the Scottish hillside, unable to grow anything. But collectively, they all make money. And I have a belief that actually nobody can own land. It's not something that has that sort of association. Nobody can own land. It's not something that ought to be so economically linked to one individual. We all live in it, and we all have a responsibility towards it. So, what should we do? I mean, one simple way would be to say, well, we'll have a land tax then. We'll put a value across the world, across our world, and demand that all those people that use the land pay a tax, however minimal, just to make the point, I think, that nobody owns it. They are leaseholders in much the same way as I have to pay a lease of the apartment that I now live in. I don't own the land, somebody else does. So what would a common environmental use policy do for us? Historically, we've had problems with land ownership. The farmers, those in control, have raped our land for their individual goods. That needs to be reconsidered, if not changed. And I want to keep it fairly simple. I think for a start, what we should say is that our land is for us. It's not for anybody else to make a profit out of unless we share in that profit. Now, at the moment, we import a lot of our food. I think that is something that needs to be considered. Why should we import so much? We've become very used to being able to buy anything at any time. And I understand that. And there are some products that even we in this wonderful land of ours can't produce. So imports of some sort or another will always be necessary. But I see no reason why I can't buy Welsh lamb, for instance, because most of it gets exported elsewhere. I see no reason why in my part of the country, in East Anglia, we have a facility that is planning to export 300,000 tonnes of grain from our landscape elsewhere. We should have first call on that sort of facility, that sort of product. Our producers should be able to have a level playing field at least, if not a competitive advantage. We should move away from the idea that food is cheap and that retailers should be able to go anywhere in the world to buy cheap produce. We are now an industry, the great British industry. And so we all have to work together. What I'm leading towards, of course, is perhaps we need tariffs. We will have the ability to reimpose those tariffs. As I speak, people are telling me that Europe will be devastated by all this and will impose all sorts of controls. But Europe sells more to us than we sell to Europe. So, are they going to be happy if we start to impose tariffs on the import of wine, of olives, and of cars, and all sorts of other products? They have a trade advantage with us, some 65 billion euros a year we buy from them, in excess of what they buy from us. So just stand back, fella. Just listen to what we're saying for once and not rely upon that terrible word, the one that ought to be banned, called globalisation. Globalisation helps nobody but the large corporations. So, we have this blank sheet of paper, and what are we going to put upon it? I'm going to have my breakfast, and there'll be eggs from Den, a guy up the road who lives in a bungalow with chickens in his backyard, and from the two lovely people who will have baked bread for me this morning. So, eggs on toast, I think. Seems like a good idea. And they're British.